So my name is Jeremy Corner. I run a greeting card business called Blue Eyed Sun. We've been publishing cards since 2000. It was started by my wife from a bedsit that we were sharing in London Road in Brighton. Just the two of us, and we'd put the bed away in the mornings and get working on making cards. We used to make these beautiful glass enamel cards and sell them to local shops. And we've grown now to about 15 staff. We're one of the leading UK publishers of hand-finished and handmade cards, and we export all over the world. At the moment, we're doing about 15 countries. When we first started exporting, it was about 2003, and we weren't really set up to do it. The cards were very labor-intensive to make, and it was a case of doing sort of 2 times the amount of work for half the money, and it didn't really appeal to us. So we had a lot of interest initially, but we turned a lot of people down, and the people that we did work with, we couldn't always get the prices right with them. They would want sort of 50% off, and we could only do 30 or 40. So we didn't really do it properly until about 2012, when we finally got all our products into shape, and we decided to make a specific focus on exporting internationally. That's been going really well for us over the past 2 and a bit years, and we've started working with UKTI this year, and we're hoping to expand even more. So these days, exports make about 20% of our revenues. Export sales for us are growing by about 30 to 40% a year. And we're not, although that sounds like a large number, we tend to be adding about 2 to 3 international distributors every year to try and reach those figures. We've done all of this primarily working with distributors. We do sell direct to some shops around the world, but we like to have partners in each country because it means that we've got someone on the ground who's dealing with the retailers and looking after all their needs in each country. We managed all of this without traveling abroad as well. So haven't done any shows in Europe, haven't flown out to any countries or anything like that. We have had a couple of visits to shows, but we've never actually gone to exhibit at them. So these are some of the tools that we've used to grow our exports. They're pretty straightforward, and you may be already aware of some of them. If you're not, definitely check them out. I should just say, by the way, my talk is all interactive. So the slides are on my blog and on SlideShare, on my SlideShare account. And if you click on any of these logos, it will take you through to the relevant websites in the talk. So trade magazines, these are the main ones for us: Progressive Greetings, Greetings Today, and also Gift Focus. There are, of course, others like Gifts Today. It's worth paying attention to them, reading them, subscribe to them. They've got a lot of case studies in there of people who are already selling abroad, but they often mention specific distributors, specific people who will be distributing with certain companies, and it's good to build up a list over time, which is basically what we did. Even though we were turning a lot of distributors down, we'd say to people, we'll take your details, find out who they sold, what other card publishers, that kind of thing, and follow these types of things in the magazines as well. We also did trade fairs. Obviously, Spring Fair International, 2 best ones for our business for bringing in international customers and distributors. But we also have Progressive Live, which is in May, June time. That's also really good for international for us. We're a member of 2 associations, the Greeting Card Association and the Giftware Association. They have lists of people, and they've got people as well within their organizations who can point you in the right direction of contacts. So if you say, well, I've got a distributor from Norway's come to see me today, I want to check them out, find out if they're any good to work with, if they're reliable, they pay their bills, that kind of thing. Usually if you're a member of these organizations, they can put you in touch with people to get referrals, which is useful. I've got networking now. I've put LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I think, is a really good way of getting yourself known and having a profile that you control that enables people from these other countries to check you out and get a sense of whether you're any good at what you do. So we have a LinkedIn company profile, but I have a personal profile. I don't have my whole life story in there. I've just got stuff that relates to what I want to do at the moment, which is obviously greeting card sales. And networking at events as well. So if there's Gift of the Year Awards and you're invited to it at the show or any other networking events at these shows, it's definitely worth going if someone invites you to dinner while you're at the show, if you're lucky enough. You know, it's worth taking them up. And you often find that you end up in a restaurant and you're chatting with someone and they say, oh, this is Hans from Germany and he's got he's a German distributor. And then before you know it, you're chatting with Hans, you get on really well. He says, oh, what do? You say cards or whatever you sell. And he says, oh, I'm at the show. I'll come and check out your stand tomorrow. It's through these kind of tenuous links that you meet other people. And then the internet's very good for that. So Facebook as well. We've got a Facebook account, and we've had several distributors come to us, and also several international customers come to us through just having a Facebook page and people contacting us through Facebook. Lastly, obviously, UKTI, they've got their stand here, so you can talk to those guys. They can recommend certain distributors within your countries that you're trying to target. They can let you know about them, and they can even do events where you say, well, I want to network, I want to go to that country, and I want to have a drinks do at their embassy in Holland, and I want to impress the local distributors. You can organize those type of things for a small fee. So these are some of the ways that you can work internationally, and these are some of the options that we looked at. Obviously, as I said, we're primarily working with distributors, but you can also sell direct to retailers. So in America, it's one of the biggest markets, but we work primarily with a single retailer out there who also has a distribution arm. But initially, when we first started selling to them, it was we just wanted to work with the retailer, and the advantage to us at that time was that we weren't having to give away as much margin as we'd have to give to a distributor, because the products were just going straight to their shops and they'd sell them from there, rather than straight to the distributor's warehouse, and he has to pay his sales agents to sell them, he has to pay his warehouse to look after them, plus he's got to pay shipping, and he's got to make money as well. You can use sales reps and managers, so you can set up your own system, or you can use freelance agents as well to set up an agent network. So a friend of mine, she's got a card company, and she's setting up her own network of agents in America, and she's set up her own warehouse over there that she's outsourcing to, and she's taking on that market on her own, so that's another way of doing it. And also there are several international sales consultants in the industry, so if you want any names, you can see me afterwards and I can recommend some to you, but they essentially can do you a load of introductions and get you meeting new people. So I just want to talk about what some of the things that exports meant for us as a company. It's led to meaningful profit growth. Interesting, when we first started doing it, I thought, well, it's not going to be worthwhile, because generally speaking, you have to give up about half your margin from your trade price. So say you sell a card at £1. In our industry, you might have to give up to 50% and sell it for 50p to a distributor. And the reason that is because they've got to pay their sales agent 15 to 20%. They've got to pay 5% courier and warehousing costs. And then they've got to make some money in there. And plus also, they've got issues like they've got to take returns. So if their shops don't sell them, they get cards back. And also if they get left over with stock, they've got to write that off. So you have to leave some bit of the pie for the distributor, otherwise he's just not going to be interested in working with you. So I thought, well, 50% off, that's not going to be as good for us. But generally what it means is you're working with another one of you in each country. So the market's it's not as big as the UK, but they're still big enough for the volumes to be significant. And certainly with our first export order, it was big enough to pay the deposit on our first home, which is incredible. It took us 6 weeks to make. We made these are all bits of glass enamel, and they're on bits of copper with glass powder, put them in a tray of 20 of them into a kiln of 900 degrees. That melts down, take it out, do a second layer on it, back in. And my wife, there's a photo of her in front of this big order, like passed out at the end of it. But it was good because it tested us and moved us forward, and we learned a lot doing it. So it changed the way we planned our distribution. So that customer was the retailer in America, and we realized actually we weren't ready to distribute at that time. It was just too labor intensive for us. So once we got the cards to a point where we thought, actually, this is very scalable and we can handle the business, then we started to looking at our export plan. Having said that, we did start a long, fruitful relationship with the retailer in America, and it's been very successful to this day. And we're very glad they stuck with us through all these years. It also extended sales, obviously, so we're selling more of products that we do, and extends product life cycles. So if we design, say, this mummy card over here, and we sell it to all our retailers in the UK, at some point those retailers are going to get tired and they're going to want something new. But in international markets, they're not seen in those markets. So if you design and develop a product, over time you get more out of that development time if you sell into these other markets. Our best sellers are still, some of these cards still sell abroad, and we don't sell as much in the UK anymore, and it spreads development costs. And it also means you find cheaper ways of production, because you just get better the more you make. And lastly, options for clearance as well, so if you've got leftover stock. For us, it meant we led to developing new products as well. If you look on the left there, you'll see the original product that we were selling in the UK. German distributor came along and said, well, I like this design, but in Germany you have to pay more to send a square card than sending a rectangular card. And that's something to bear in mind if any of you publish greeting cards. The 7x5 shape, it seems to be internationally favored. So we said, fine, we can adapt this design for you. And he said, I want it in German as well. So we did that, changed the shape. And as you can see, we put Happy Birthday on in German. And then after we'd done all that, one of the things we found is you can see all the writing stitched there. So it's quite labor intensive for us to do these changes. And then, of course, the margin's not as good. So we thought, right, on the next range, we don't want to have the fonts, the writing stitched because it's too much work to change the German. So we used fonts, which are much quicker. And so the new range came out. We did a new shape as well, so we didn't have to change about with the format. And it meant we could easily change the language going forward. And that new range ended up becoming a finalist in the Henry's Awards, which is the main, like, the Oscars of the greeting card industry. And I would say that product, in a way, almost wouldn't have happened if we hadn't have started our export. So it has those kind of effects as well. That's not my warehouse, by the way, as much as I'd love it to be. That's how I want it to be one day, pure efficiency. But it definitely has improved our systems doing export because we are doing a lot more volume. You have to get more efficient, and you've got less margin. So you need to, if you've got efficient systems, it's going to save you costs. It's going to minimize problems, and those have had all knock-on effects onto our British business as well. Because if you get more efficient, you're saving costs for your international. That's going to have an effect on your national sales. So we changed our stock layout of a warehouse system. We used to have all our cards on shelves sort of side on, and we turned the boxes. Sounds really obvious, and you probably all laugh at me, but we just turned the boxes round, so you look at the ends of the box and you pick from the end, and we were in effect picking from the side. In fact, we were worse than that. We were getting the box in, decanting it onto the shelves with all these cards, and then picking stuff up. And now the boxes go straight out to our outworkers or in our in-house team who are making stuff. They put it straight in the box. That box goes onto the shelf, and we rip off a little tear thing on the end of it, so it creates a hole, and we can just pick out of these bins. So little things like that really have improved our business massively, and I don't think we would have done them if we hadn't been exporting. We also obviously had economies of scale as well, so you're buying more, that brings down your print costs, your board costs, you're spending more with your various suppliers, so you can go back to them and renegotiate on price. And it also makes your marketing effective. So when I'm at these shows now, I've been taking out adverts because I'm not just interested in British buyers, I'm also interested in international buyers. And those distributors, they're reading all these magazines and these the show guide and all the rest of it. And I'm interested in finding those guys now. So I spend a bit more on that, and it makes it more efficient. We use Sage software, and that's really great because it handles multiple currencies for us. So we have a US dollar account, a euro account, but of course, euro and dollars go up and down all the time, and this software enables you to see roughly what you've got in your dollar account in pounds and roughly what you're charging people. It is something to bear in mind, the exchange rate. Generally, we agree a British price, but obviously the euro's just tanked in the last month. So you have to bear in mind when you're dealing with these international, you can't just say, well, it is the price it is, because if you're not careful, it's not going to be worth your distributing partner's time. So sometimes there's a bit of give and take, and you have to go back and renegotiate when currencies change. If you can, though, it's good to use pounds because it's just easier for you. You don't have to manage too many currency accounts. Exports also led to the growth of our people. I've got a team of elves. They're very good. I recommend them. Santa lent them to me. I've got a variety of people. So I've got a production section, but I've also got a guy who looks after customers, and someone who looks after general operations, and someone who looks after our wedding business. What it's meant is you can't do everything yourself. And it's forced me to delegate. So I don't work full-time in my business, and export has really helped me to learn to delegate because I just couldn't handle it all. In fact, when we made the plan to export, I said to my wife, this is what we want to do. And my wife, who I have the business with, and she does all the designs. And she said, well, we can do it, but you've got to get an assistant. And I hired an assistant just it all worked out very nicely because it just so happened someone was coming to Brighton looking for a job, and she used to be a buyer at one of the main stores, and she wanted to live in Brighton. She's very good with spreadsheets and very organized, and I hired her and as an assistant to start with, and she's now our operations manager. She's worked her way up through the business, and it's been fantastic. So it's meant we've had better delegation. We've had to make the staff goal focused because you have to make sure they make so many an hour or pack so many an hour or whatever it is that you're doing, so to get your costs down because you've got less margin, which has obviously had good knock-on effects for our British business. They've had to get better as a team. Our team were not as strong 5 years ago as they are today. We've essentially kind of cut out the dead wood, if you like. And that's because people had to either step up or they had to step out. We couldn't carry anyone within the business. It was growing rapidly. And it's you're only as strong as your weakest link. So I try and focus on making sure I'm the weakest link. And then if everyone around me is doing the best they can and they're good at what they do, then that's fantastic. And I'm not needed in the business as much, and it can grow accordingly. So there's negative and positive impacts that's worth considering when you do export. Some of the negative impacts, potentially, if you don't plan for them, are things like cash flow strain. Obviously, if you're making an extra 100,000 cards a year or 100,000 widgets or whatever it is you're exporting, you're going to have to pay for those or pay your suppliers for them before you get your money back in from your distributors. And typically, distributors will want to pay at about 60 plus days. Sometimes we do pro formas. At the moment, we have a Greek distributor, and obviously with Greece being the way it is, we're very cautious. So they pay us pro forma, which means cash up front. So you can end up having a lot of stuff out there, shipping out around the world, and you've paid for all of that, and it's taking time for the money to come back in. And so you have to plan for that. So before you start exporting, make sure you've got some cash in the bank to help you cope with those strains. Obviously, there's credit risk. Like I mentioned, we felt that Greece was a credit risk, not necessarily people themselves, just the country. And so, when you think there is a credit risk, you've got to take action and ask for pro forma. But, it's worth checking out all the people you're trading with. And again, UKTI are quite good for that, but there's lots of websites as well where you can check companies out. I mentioned currency fluctuations, so I won't go into that again. Quality control is just simple things. I mean, if you don't speak German and you don't have anyone on your team who speaks German and you do the German text on the card, you've got to get your distributor to sign off on it. And by that, it's not verbal. You've got to have an email coming back from them saying, yep, I've seen this, I'm happy with the changes, it's all right for me, and then you won't have any problems. And then you have to make sure as it's coming through, it all matches up with what you've sent to them. And it's very easy for things to make mistakes, and those mistakes obviously cost you more because you're making less margin. If you have 2,000 cards go wrong and you've got to ditch them because they're no use to the guy, then it's going to cost you. So you just need to be on your game with that. There's intellectual property risk. IP means intellectual property. That's people potentially copying your work, and I think that's just a risk you have to run. It's better to get out in those marketplaces, but you have a good relationship with your distributors, and they'll look out for anyone trying to do the same thing. It helps if you're trademarked because your brand is protected, and you can get European trademarks quite easy, and that stands you in good stead for any kind of international legal claims. There's freight forwarding issues, so generally they will pay for their freight forwarding, but obviously that's another third party that you're kind of dealing with, so you have to have good communication with those guys and make sure that you know exactly when they're expecting something. A classic one is shipping date and delivery date. So shipping date is when it leaves you, and delivery date is when it arrives with them. And I'm really clear, I spell it out in black and white with my distributors. I say, right, it's leaving us on a Friday and we expect it to be with you by this Friday. Because often a distributor goes, well, it's got to the first Friday and they expect it to be with them. So just make sure they understand the difference when you say, oh, the shipping dates. And again, that sorts out your miscommunication problems. If you've got language issues, there are lots of, Google's fantastic for Google Translate. Like we have a deal with a French distributor. My French is pretty poor, but we use Google Translate as really, really helpful. But even if that doesn't work for you, it's good to have some kind of connection where they can help you translate things. Again, there's lots of tools on the internet for that these days. You can visit the Gov website for more tips on the details of those things. These are some of the positive impacts. So like I said earlier, it can improve how you do things. We had to sharpen up our game. Our website got better. Everything else had to get better. And it can also improve volumes. So the volumes are really what make the difference in the international sales and bring the profits in. You get new access to new markets. So sometimes you might have to do a deal with a country that's smaller and you think, gosh, 50% I have to give them a little bit more maybe, or something like that. And what you realize is actually, if I don't do this deal, as long as I make money, it's a deal worth doing. But if I don't do this deal, I'm just not going to sell any cards in that market. So sometimes you have to be aware of that and just say, well, okay, I'm never going to go over to Malta or wherever and sell cards myself, but working with this person, I might not make as much margin, but I'm going to get some sales and I'll still make profits, so it's worth me doing. Especially if it's easy and you don't have to do that many changes to your product. Which in a lot of these countries you can do. Even countries where you think, gosh, they must want the cards in French or whatever, they will still buy certain English products, especially if it's something simple, like just saying happy birthday rather than to the one I love on your birthday. It's really exciting seeing your products going global. You know, your friends will love it. You're like, we're in 15 countries. It sounds really impressive. It feels less impressive to yourself when you're doing it because there's always more that you can do. But it's pretty cool imagining that there's people in Switzerland and Australia and France and everywhere buying our cards and going into these nice stores. And we're in some lovely stores. And I've learned a lot about stores around the world selling to these other countries. You meet new people. Now, you can meet new people in a bar, but I like meeting new people who have got businesses, especially businesses that relate to my business. So I've had a lot of, like with the German example, a lot of feedback from my distributors who are business people and said, well, have you thought about doing it this way? Or we do it this way. What do you think? You know, and I ask a lot of questions to see if there's ways that I can improve things. So that's been a really positive impact. Obviously, you grow your business, and it's really fantastic for the UK for us to have our product shipping all over the world. As I mentioned, you're going to need help. You're going to need a Rachel. Rachel's the girl that I hired to help me, and she does a fantastic job. You've got more admin. So some countries have different requirements. Like the EC, you have to do this thing called, if you're VAT registered, you have to do a thing called the EC sales list, and that's a monthly or quarterly report, depending on how much you ship. And it's not, you just have to say, this is the VAT number of the company I've sold to, and this is how much I shipped to them during this period. But that's just an admin thing that you have to constantly keep up with. So you have to be prepared for those kind of things. And also with logistics as well. Like if you sell over a certain amount to Switzerland, you have to fill in new forms and new paperwork. So you've got to allow time for that, or you've got to get someone to help you do those things. Product alterations take time. Different time zones and languages. We get a lot of emails, unfortunately, on Friday evening from America, just as we're leaving the office, because on Friday they're trying to clear their desk and get everything out to us. So just you have to be aware of that and plan for that, and just you know, either expect to come in early on the Monday to deal with it, or stay slightly later on the Friday, whatever it is for you. And you have to stay on top of the export sales. It's really easy when you get really busy to forget to market to these countries. You think, oh, and if you don't pay attention to it, you can be like, gosh, I haven't spoken to that guy from Hong Kong for 2 years, you know, and if you'd stayed on top of him and emailed him and said, how's it going, you know, are they selling well for you, and getting feedback, you might find actually if you just changed X, Y, and Z or altered the price slightly, you could have had an extra 10 grand that year. But because you haven't stayed on top of it, you're missing out on your sales. So you've got to stay on top of your international sales and also your UK sales as well, because as soon as you get busy, obviously the volumes are much greater for your international sales, but then your attention's on those, and if you're not careful, you can let your national customers down. And obviously you don't want to do that because that's your main core business. So that's something to keep in mind. These are some of the bits of paperwork that you just have to keep an eye on. So you need to keep good copies and records. When you ship internationally, you need to keep when they send you their remittance statement, whether it's by email or whatever, you've got to keep all of that stuff, because the HMRC with the VAT, they want to check that you're not defrauding the VAT system. So you have to, not only you can't just say, well, I sent this order and here's the invoice. They say, well, prove to us that you sent it, you didn't charge VAT. Why not prove to us that you had the payment come through from someone in America? And so all the paperwork you can get to help you with that, the better. And I keep it all in one place from my international, so it's really easy to find if we ever do get audited. You need to track, as I mentioned, the AC sales list, so we don't go back into that again. But the EU VAT numbers, it's worth double checking those on your distributors to make sure they're not wrong. They have to be 100% right. And it's worth checking that before you ship the order. Now, there's websites that will let you do that. If you just do Google check VAT numbers on the EU, it'll take you through that. So you need to get your pricing right, as I've mentioned. Quote prices in GBP or USD rather than just pounds, because other countries have pounds, so you don't want to get confused, and if you don't put if you put USD or GBP instead of the actual symbol, that'll mean that if there's any email issues, so sometimes, I don't know if you've had this, but you send an email and it goes in HTML format and the pound sign just disappears, and then they might think that it's in dollars, but if you put USD, that won't change, the letters will stay the same. Ex Works means you have to deliver to their freight forwarder. Definitely do Ex Works. There's another thing called free on board where you get it basically onto the ship. A lot of distributors will arrange to pick up straight from your warehouse, and it's best if you can try and do that if you can. I mentioned foreign exchange. We use, there's loads of foreign exchange brokers, I should say, actually. We do use Sage International Payments, but there are others that we use as well. And you kind of, I found I've become not just a greeting card publisher, but also a currency specialist. Because if I sell in dollars or I sell in euros, right now I've got some euros sitting in the bank, but I don't want to change them because it's going to mean lower profits for me. Now, at the end of the year, I'll have to report them at the exchange rate at the 31st of March, and that'll be that. But I know that if I'm just patient, these currencies, they go up and down, and I can cash my dollars. I've just cashed all my dollars in recently because it went right down to 1.5. And when it was up at 1.8, that's 30 points. It makes a huge difference. If you're trading $100,000, that's several thousand pounds that you're missing out on if you don't wait for those changes, if you can afford to, because obviously you might need the cash for other things. So just be aware of that when you're trading. MOQ means minimum order quantities. You'll hear this a lot when you trade internationally, whether you're buying or shipping. Pro forma, as I said, means payment up front. And you may need to set yourself up with dollar and euro accounts to get you going. So that's it. So that's my Twitter. I'm at Stan4L66 if anyone wants to ask me questions. I'll hang around here for another 5 or 10 minutes if you've got anything to ask. And if you want to tweet, there's my Twitter. And also I do this thing called the Ladder Club, which is a seminar in the autumn for greeting card publishers. It's specifically focused on card publishers, new, and it's got 2 days, brand new ones, and then people who are trying to climb up the ladder to do better. It's a very good seminar. I don't organize it. A friend of mine, Lynn Tate, she organizes it. It's only about £50. And if you haven't been to it or you're looking to expand your business on cards, it's very worth attending. It's an excellent seminar. I write a lot on this type of thing as well on my blog. I write mainly for my retailers, but there's a lot of things about business, how to improve your business, social media tips, all that kind of stuff. So if you are interested in those subjects, check out my blog. And I also write for Progressive Greetings magazine, so take a look at my column.